Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely demystify English past tenses. We're going to shift them away from feeling like dry, rigid grammatical rules and instead turn them into a totally dynamic toolkit. Because ultimately, that's exactly what tenses are. They're the structural tools we use to build the timelines of our lives and share our personal experiences with the world. Let's dive right in with a bit of philosophy from Albert Einstein. He once said, "Time is relative. Its only worth depends upon what we do as it is passing." Notice how his use of the present continuous tense, is passing, really gives motion and urgency to the thought. Expressing time correctly isn't just about passing some grammar test. It actually gives crucial context to the stories we tell. Interestingly, some languages don't even have a defined past tense, and they rely entirely on context instead. But in English, we rely heavily on these structural markers to make sense of our world. To make this complex topic super digestible, here's our agenda. 1. Making sense of the past. 2. Simple past and irregular verbs. 3. Continuous, interruptions and backgrounds. 4. Perfect tenses, ordering events. 5. The habitual past. And finally, 6. Avoiding common grammar mistakes. Let's get into it. Part 1. Making sense of the past and defining the timeline. Let's start by understanding exactly why English even requires distinct past tenses. When we tell a story, we need to add depth. We have to know what happened first, what came next, and what was happening in the background. It's all about establishing a really precise chronological order so we can communicate clearly. To do this, we have 4 primary past tenses that act as our core building blocks. We have the past simple for completed actions, the past continuous for ongoing actions that often get interrupted, the past perfect to show an action was completely finished before another one started, and the past perfect continuous to express the duration of an event leading right up to a specific past point. These 4 tools are basically everything you need to organize history. Moving to part 2, simple past and irregular verbs, a historical puzzle. Now, the most foundational tool we have is the simple past, which we use for actions that started and finished before the present moment. But there's a catch. We really can't talk about the simple past without addressing the historical chaos behind irregular verbs. Here's a really fascinating question. Why do irregular verbs even exist in the first place? They aren't just frustrating exceptions designed to make learning English difficult. If you trace this all the way back to early Old English around 870 AD, there were strong and weak verbs. Over generations, the weak verbs coalesced into the regular ad-ed past tense we know today. But the strong verbs, they persisted. They are literal historical survivors derived from Proto-Indo-European root vowel alternations, which linguists call ablot formations. So when you say went instead of goed, you're actually speaking a piece of ancient linguistic history. Conquering these historical survivors doesn't have to be a headache. You can actually do it systematically in just 3 strategic steps. First, focus on the most common irregulars that you'll use every single day: to be, to go, to do, to have, and to say. Second, group them by patterns. For instance, find the verbs that never change form at all, like cut, 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 or put, put, put. And third, use active recall tools like flashcards and mind maps to really lock them in. That brings us to part 3, continuous, interruptions and backgrounds. Life rarely happens in a vacuum, right? Most often, our life happenings are deeply connected. So we need a way to describe how one event can interrupt something we're already doing, or how to just set the scene for a story. Think about the simple past as dropping a single pin on a timeline. Saying I read a book is just a standalone event, but the continuous tense, it draws a line of ongoing action that gets interrupted by something new. I was reading a book when the phone rang. The continuous tense uses was or were plus the ing verb to set that background scene, making it absolutely crucial for good storytelling.
All right, part 4, perfect tenses, ordering events. Let's see how we take this and organize multiple events. Fortunately, we aren't always interrupted. Often, we finish one thing completely before we start another. When things don't interrupt each other, the past perfect acts as your ultimate timeline organizer. It clearly states that one action was 100% finished before another began. If you say she had walked to the store before she noticed she forgot her wallet, the past perfect had walked makes it undeniably clear which event happened first. It effectively tells the listener, first this happened and then that happened, bringing flawless logic to your timeline. But hey, what if you want to express exactly how long an action lasted right up to a specific moment in the past? That's where the past perfect continuous comes in. Following the grammatical math here, you built it by taking the subject, adding the auxiliary verb had, then been, and finally a base verb ending in ing. It's just an elegant way of expressing time in the past without having to list out every single hour and minute. You do have to be precise, though. If you leave out a specific duration marker, like for 5 minutes or since Friday, a lot of English speakers will naturally default right back to the past continuous tense. And this is a big deal because it completely shifts the emphasis of your sentence from highlighting a long duration of time to highlighting an interrupted action. Let's put this into practice. Have you ever tried to explain to someone why you were totally exhausted? This comparison reveals how a single auxiliary verb drastically shifts your meaning. If you say, he was tired because he was exercising, it literally means he was exercising at that exact, precise moment in time. But if you say, he was tired because he had been exercising, the whole meaning shifts. Now you're emphasizing an extended duration of time that caused the fatigue. It's a subtle structural shift, but it changes the entire mental picture for the listener. Moving on to part 5, the habitual past. Beyond plotting singular events or ongoing actions, sometimes we just want to reminisce. We need a way to talk about our childhoods or old routines that just aren't true anymore today. That is exactly where the habitual past comes in. To express these old habits, we generally rely on 2 phrases, used to and would. You might say you used to ride your bike to school, or you would sleep in on weekends. But there's a super specific rule you need to know. Used to works for both actions and states of being. Would, on the other hand, can never be used to describe past states of being. So you can totally say, we used to live in a small village, but it's grammatically incorrect to say we would live in a small village. Finally, part 6, avoiding common grammar mistakes. We've got all our timeline tools established now, so let's quickly flag a few grammatical pitfalls that can distort your stories and confuse your listeners. Watch out for these 3 major traps. First up, verb tense mismatches. Don't say, I was going to work when I get stuck in traffic. Make sure your tenses agree. I was going when I got stuck. Second, avoid over-relying on the simple past when you actually need background context. Instead of saying, I went home but saw an accident, which sounds a bit disjointed, use the continuous. I was going home when I saw an accident. And finally, never apply continuous tenses to non-continuous or state verbs. You can't say the motorcycle had been belonging to George. You just have to use the perfect tense there. The motorcycle had belonged to George. By understanding these structural tenses, you're not just memorizing grammar rules. You're literally mastering the art of storytelling. So here's a challenge for you to take away. Look back at your own timeline. Think of a vivid memory. How will you use the perfect tense to frame an event that happened right before another? Go ahead and craft your next story using these exact tools to give it depth, precision, and perfect chronological order. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy timeline building.